In April of 2021, when they were rolling out the COVID shot, we were noticing that all these women were having bleeding. Women who hadn't had the shot were having bleeding. We were getting calls. This is the a group of doctors that I have worked with around the country. 2-year-olds being around recently vaccinated grandparents would have bleeding. 90-year-olds were calling me. Women were unable to travel. They would be bleeding for 100 days, some of them hemorrhaging. There were Facebook groups of 17,000, 100,000 women weighing in, support groups. Then they were just censored and removed overnight. So I was talking with Tiffany Parado, who had also been a strategist for our disinformation dozen thing when, I was one of the disinformation dozen by the Center for the Countering of Digital Hate out of London, where they named 12 of us as responsible for 70% of the disinformation on COVID on the
Oh
internet.
my
Um,
god, I wasn't
so
aware of that. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
yeah. Yeah, that was a nice little witch hunt. So if you were to, just put in the disinformation dozen, you will see every newspaper on the entire planet named all of us. And we all lost our Instagram channels and all of that. But so what we did, I was at the very first Clay Clark Reawaken America event, and he'd asked me to talk about what's in the shot. And as I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, how are we going to study this? Because they're blocking every angle. They're blocking this information from getting out there. And these are women's stories. My whole life has been to validate women's stories of what's happening in their bodies. Anyway, I was sitting next to a guy named Warren Geek who happened to have a database company and 3 daughters. So he was concerned. Well, then he said, I can do this. And then Tiffany and a bunch of others put together a survey, and we eventually got 6,000 women who hadn't had the shot. They didn't have COVID, negative PCR test, no symptoms whatsoever. And we began to study them. And here's one of the things we found. In the world literature, there are only 40 cases of what's called decidual cast shedding, where the entire inside of the uterus comes out, usually after 3 days of cramping. 40 in the world literature. In our database of 6,000 women, there were 240 cases of decidual cast shedding. Women would send us pictures that looked like a plaster of Paris cast of the inside of their uterus. Then what we did is with all of the right statistical analyses, we're able to find that within 3 days of someone close to them getting the shot, 70% of the women in our study were having abnormal bleeding, and it continues to this day. Sometimes kids get nosebleeds. It's usually around a recently vaccinated person. So and by the way, in the original Pfizer trials, they said no man should get a woman pregnant for 6 months, and it was a reportable event to touch a pregnant woman if you'd had the shot, which they instantly hid. And so you have to ask yourself, what did they know? What is being shed? We don't know to this day. Women are saying, specific women, I can't go out into a group unless I'm willing to have abnormal periods for 3 months. So
Wow.
we just got our paper published in the International Journal of Vaccine Theory, Practice, and Research. Menstrual abnormalities strongly associated with proximity to COVID-19 vaccinated individuals. Now, we ran into roadblock after roadblock after roadblock. As you might imagine, nobody wanted to publish this. It's peer review. We put together a wonderful team of all volunteers to do this. We had Dr. James Thorpe, maternal fetal medicine, Sue Peters. We had all kinds of people who knew what they were doing, OBGYNs, statisticians, people who public health people. And we all became a family. Like, let's just get this done. No, we weren't funded by anything except God.